Tonight, we're diving deep into a story that feels like it's been ripped from the pages of a dark fairy tale. It's a story of mysticism, of corruption, and of a murder so bizarre it almost defies belief. We are pulling back the curtain on one of history's most haunting figures, Grigori Rasputin, the so-called mad monk who somehow managed to hold the fate of the entire Russian Empire in his dirty, calloused hands. This is the story of his unbelievable power and his even more unbelievable death. Our story really begins at its end. So picture this. It's St. Petersburg, deep in the brutal grip of a Russian winter. The whole city is a powder keg, just waiting to explode with social unrest. And the First World War is absolutely bleeding the nation dry. It's in this tense, frozen landscape that authorities make a truly grim discovery in the icy waters of the Neva River. A discovery that is about to send shockwaves right to the very heart of the monarchy. Yeah, this wasn't just a death. This was an execution, a brutal one. The body was savaged, which tells you everything you need to know about the sheer hatred his killers felt. So the question is, who was this man? And what could he have possibly done to inspire such a violent, almost desperate end? Well, to understand that, we have to go back, way back. We're going to travel from the glittering, opulent palaces of St. Petersburg all the way to the vast, wild, and unforgiving expanse of Siberia. Because it's here, in the middle of nowhere, that we find the origins of Grigori Rasputin, a man who would rise from total obscurity to become the most powerful and maybe the most feared man in all of Russia. Now, this is what's so fascinating about the guy. He was a walking contradiction. I mean, by all accounts, Rasputin was, well, he was a slob. He had long, greasy hair, disgusting fingernails, and a pretty serious love for vodka. And yet this same man was seen by so many as a holy prophet, a man directly inspired by God, someone who had this almost supernatural power of fascination, this incredible hypnotic control. It's this bizarre, two-sided nature that made him so compelling, and ultimately so dangerous. So, to really get Rasputin, you have to understand let's call it the strange religious vibe in Russia at the time. You see, for a lot of people, the official Orthodox Church felt really stiff and distant. It created this kind of spiritual vacuum. And this was especially true for the aristocracy, who, frankly, were bored and anxious and started dabbling in mysticism and the occult. Rasputin came out of this world, a world of fringe sects like the Hlistis, groups that basically threw out the rulebook in favor of a direct, raw, and ecstatic connection with God. And when we say ecstatic, we mean it. This slide shows just how extreme some of these practices were. Take a related group, the Jumpers. Their meetings would involve chanting that would build and build into this frenzy of jumping, men and women literally yelling like enraged savages until they just collapsed from pure exhaustion. This was the spiritual furnace that forged Rasputin, a world of raw, physical, and, let's be honest, deeply unsettling religious passion. And from that world, he cultivated this immense personal power. I mean, just listen to this quote. This isn't just a description, it's practically a confession from one of his followers. People genuinely believed he had these extraordinary, even terrifying abilities. They felt like he could look right into their souls, that his presence could be felt from thousands of miles away. It was this hypnotic power that was about to become his golden ticket right through the palace doors. So how in the world does a Siberian peasant with a background in bizarre religious cults find his way into the inner circle of the most powerful family on the planet? Well, the answer is simple, and it's heartbreaking. It all comes down to a mother's desperation. You really have to try to imagine the constant, crushing anxiety that Empress Alexandra lived with every single day. Her only son, Alexei, the heir to the entire empire, had hemophilia. It's this terrible genetic disease that she herself had passed down to him from her grandmother, Queen Victoria. It meant his blood couldn't clot, a simple bump or a fall could cause massive, agonizing internal bleeding that the best doctors in the world were powerless to stop. Alexandra was just consumed by guilt and fear, watching her son live on a razor's edge. So she turned away from medicine and towards faith, praying, begging for a miracle. And then, like an answer to a prayer, Rasputin appeared. He was introduced by a trusted friend and brought to the palace. Whenever the young prince had a bleeding episode, Rasputin would be called to his bedside. Now, some historians think his incredibly calming presence and maybe some hypnotic techniques genuinely lowered the boy's stress and blood pressure, which can actually help slow bleeding. But whatever the reason, be it luck, psychology, or something else entirely, the boy often got better after Rasputin's visits. For the desperate empress, this was all the proof she needed. Rasputin wasn't just a holy man. He was her son's savior, sent directly from God. Okay, so with the Empress's absolute, unwavering trust in his pocket, Rasputin's influence just explodes. He's no longer just a spiritual advisor. He becomes a shadow ruler, a corrupting force that starts to rot the Russian government from the inside out. Just listen to the sheer arrogance in this statement. Rasputin wasn't just aware of his power, he was bathing in it. He knew that government ministers were only in their jobs because he allowed them to be. To go against Rasputin was to go against the Empress, and that, my friends, was career suicide. He had become more powerful than the most powerful men in the entire empire. And he absolutely used that power for his own gain. We're talking about government ministers being forced to wait for hours in his apartment like common servants. He got government jobs and cushy military contracts for his buddies, always taking a cut for himself. And this wasn't some hidden secret. The Russian parliament, the Duma, and the press were screaming about it. They called it an open scandal. The monarchy was being dragged through the mud, and the people's trust was just evaporating. So with the country unraveling and the Tsar's authority completely shot, a group of aristocrats decided that the only way to save Russia from Rasputin was to get rid of him. And what happened next was one of a kind, one of the most infamous and frankly bizarre assassinations in all of history. The night itself was just pure chaos. Rasputin was lured to Prince Yusupov's palace. First, they fed him cakes and wine laced with enough cyanide to kill 5 men. But nothing happened. He just kept talking. You can imagine the conspirators' growing terror. Finally, in a panic, Yusupov shot him in the chest. They thought it was over. But as they were about to get rid of the body, Rasputin's eyes flew open. He lunged at Yusupov, then scrambled on all 4s out into the snowy courtyard, roaring. They shot him again, 3 more times, then bludgeoned him, and finally dumped his body into the frozen river. The man just wouldn't die. And you have to remember, the men behind this plot were not common criminals. We're talking about the highest levels of nobility, including Prince Yusupov and even the Tsar's own cousin. In their minds, this wasn't murder. It was a patriotic duty. They truly believed they were cutting a cancer out of the motherland to save the monarchy from certain doom. But here's the thing. Killing the man didn't kill the idea of him. Not at all. To his enemies, he was a demon who was finally gone. But to his followers, he was a martyr. The Empress was completely destroyed by the news. His most fervent admirers held services for his soul. They even adopted his orphan daughters. His death didn't heal the country. It just ripped the chasm that was tearing it apart even wider. And this brings us to the final critical question. The conspirators thought they were saving the empire, but by assassinating the Empress's most trusted advisor, the one man she believed could save her son, they basically severed her last tie to reality and made the monarchy look even more corrupt and foolish. And just a few short months later, the Russian Revolution erupted and the Romanov dynasty was wiped off the face of the earth. So did they save Russia, or did they just hammer the final nail into its coffin?